Hi everyone, I welcome you to today's session. My name is Anuja and this is Strategize with Get Set Law. Now, this is a series that we are doing because we know how much you value and how much you need critical reasoning. Critical reasoning, I believe, is the first thing that distinguishes us from anybody else, and it tells the world that we can think. So all the questions are really thought-provoking. I am sure that you have been watching these videos with us and you're improving day by day, month on month. Let us get started with today's practice set. So what are we expecting? We are reading a small passage of around 300 words and then we are solving 5 critical reasoning questions. If you're new to this channel, then make sure that you take notes while you attend the session and also be with us because we are coming up with regular sessions for your benefit. So let's get started and read this very slowly together. Now, I won't recommend that you read at a pace which you will use while you're taking the mocks or your actual examination, but consider this as a class where we will read together, go slowly. The focus is more on accuracy, understanding everything, and it is not on speed. Speed is incidental, it's going to come organically if you practice enough. Okay, let's get started. So author says if there is one good thing that has happened because of lockdowns, what is that one thing? It has improved book sales and rates of reading. People had no other forms of entertainment. They had to be cooped up in their homes. So what did they do? They picked up books and they started reading. And especially this was the trend among children. They surveyed 70,000 British children, young people. Who did the survey? It was National Literacy Trust. However, now they find that this gain is gone. Now the lockdown is over and this gain is gone. So whenever you find these change words, however, nonetheless, nevertheless, make sure you pay very close attention because they are the words that change the whole deal. If you were someone who just stopped after reading the first line, you will feel that they are talking about improved reading rates. But by the time you come to the third line, you will realize, no, the trend has now reversed. Okay, figures are now just equal to what they were before the pandemic, when the trust recorded the lowest levels of reading enjoyment, just under 50%. And when was the first question asked? It was 17 years ago when this National Literacy Trust started recording these things. Now, a concurrent study of 8,000 5 to 8-year-olds found that nearly 1 in 5 did not have a book at home. Not even a single book at home. That's staggering. Okay. Now, let us try to process what these data sets mean. So, the second paragraph. These questions are not about basic literacy, but about the habit of reading. This is about the habit of reading. The children surveyed spoke of books giving them subjects to talk about. So, they say when you read, then you know what you can talk about. You can express your ideas because you have words for them. So, that is what is happening here. You get entertained, but you also get information of reading, helping them to understand people unlike themselves. It definitely gives you perspective, doesn't it? Of finding in books a place of escape and a mitigation of loneliness, that means it comes down, of aid in coping with difficulty. So these are all the benefits that one encounters when one begins reading. Children who read at home are 6 times more likely to be able to read above expected levels. That's a certain advantage that he's quoting. Children who are not reading at home, children who are reading at home. We see the ratio there. Children who are reading at home are 6 times more likely to be able to read above expected levels. While one study of adults from 31 countries found children whose homes held at least 80 books but whose schooling ended at 13 or 14 were as literate, numerate and technologically apt in adulthood as university graduates who grew up with only a few books. That is something worth paying attention to. The books are making up for the university education. Okay. Another study found that children who read more, they went on to earn more. So the author is clearly of the opinion that reading does people some good, children especially, and that's why he has quoted numerous advantages as to why one should be reading. Okay, now this is the whole set that we have got, and I'm sure you and I both have understood it perfectly well. Let's move on to question number 1. The author laments. Laments means he feels sad about it. He worries over fewer British children reading at home is most undermined. It's most weakened if it is found to be true that. Now, did you notice for a moment that when author mentioned reading, he meant reading using physical books, not online material? Did you pay attention to that? But in today's world, it's a possibility that people are reading, but they are not reading through physical books at home, right? I'm just giving you a hint. If you are smart enough, you will infer which option I'm pointing towards. Yes, I'm pointing towards option C, which says most children in Britain read a lot of blogs and informative articles online. And since they are reading online, author is not counting any of those. And he's thinking, okay, these guys are not reading at home, but we have to weaken it, undermine his conclusion. And that's why we are saying something quite opposite to his conclusion. Okay, so that is option C. Why not A? Children who read above expected levels as fraction of all children is higher in Britain than in any other European country. Now, first of all, are we comparing children of Britain to children of other European countries? No. Always remember the scope of your discussion. The theme, the scope, and the tone. These are the 3 burning questions of any passage. If we are not talking about other European countries, you bring them into picture and you say, look, anyway, children in Britain are doing better than those children. But does it affect my argument? No, not at all. What about option B? British children read as much in school as they do in home. Now again, am I comparing how much they read in school, how much they read at home? No. So the author simple submission is British children are not reading at home. And if you have to undermine it, you say something to the effect what C is doing, that yes, they are indeed reading at home. Okay, let's talk about option D. Everything British children do in lieu of, that means instead of reading books, involves reading something, at least letters on a keyboard. Now, I'm really doubtful how much of reading letters on a keyboard would be counted as reading, but still, this isn't something which is as tangible as option C. So if you see 2 options which are supporting children reading at home, then look for the one which gives more substance to you. Okay, so you bring it down to the last 2 options, and you can always do that. You can always ignore the most glaring ones, the most obvious ones. And when you bring it down to the last 2 options, that's when you decide, okay, which one is doing the job better. Okay, let's move on to question number 2. Which of the following, if true, would most strengthen? So the keyword is strengthen and most. So if there are multiple options that are strengthening, I have to choose the one which is most strengthening the findings that the reading habits have fallen to the lowest level. Okay, strengthen this. Say that yes, reading habits have fallen to the lowest level. Option B is doing the exact same job because it says the sales of books have remained the same for over 10 years, but the number of literate people has gone up by 15%. Now you do the math. If the number of literate people has gone up, number of books that are selling should have also gone up had they been reading. But since the number of books remain the same, that means these people who are becoming literate, who are able to read but are not reading. Okay, so this is doing the job. Why not the other options? Let's read and examine option A. Across the world, the sales of books and e-books have remained constant for over 10 years as the literate population has grown marginally. If you say that no, there is no substantial growth, there's just a marginal difference, then in that case, I think it's not a big problem if the sales of book has remained constant, right? So this is not doing the job. Option C. Students nowadays get a lot of assignments and projects that involve a lot of reading as compared to their peers a decade ago. So this is quite the contrary. In if you choose this, you are weakening the finding that reading habits have fallen down. Because what are you saying here? You're saying students, as compared to their seniors of a decade ago, students now are reading a lot more. You are not supposed to say that. Remember what you need to do, and then you will be able to do it right. Let's read option D. As compared to teenagers and adults 15 years ago, their peers today spend three times the time playing video games. Now, when you say this option, I suppose you somehow want me to assume that if they are playing video games, then they are not reading. But maybe their reading has also gone up and their time in video game has also gone up. Okay, it's not a zero-sum game. Keep your common sense assumptions aside. What generally happens, we are not supposed to use it here unless it is categorically mentioned or explicitly given. Okay, so we can't for sure say that if they are giving more time to video games, that means definitely their reading time has come down. We can't do that. You get the point? You can't assume about something when you have no evidence. So that's why question number 2, the answer is B. Let's move on to question 3. Which of the following actions would enjoy the support of the National Literacy Trust? Remember, this trust was the one which did the survey, find out how readership is going down. What is the kind of thing that they are going to recommend? They will obviously recommend something that will increase the readership, and option C is exactly that initiative. In fact, I would also personally love this initiative. If you have Libraries on Wheels, a free book borrowing service where buses are converted into mobile libraries, and this will be just so convenient for somebody who wasn't even considering reading in the first place, but now can go ahead with it, right? Why not A? Make more books available for free to people who like to read. Now, these people are not even our concern. People who like to read, they will anyway read. We don't have to work for them. Here, we are trying to proselytize and convert the non-readers into reading. So, A is not our target audience. B. At the cost of library subscriptions to school and college fees of the students. Isn't this coercive? Isn't this forceful if you're making it compulsory for college students to pay for library subscriptions? And even if you make it compulsory, that wouldn't even ensure that they are using the services. It's the parents' money through which they are paying, most probably. And if you're forcing them to buy something, doesn't mean that they are going to use it. So we're not going to go for coercive measures, forceful measures, because why not? Because their outcome is not very, very obvious what the outcome would be. A similar thing can be said about D. Show school and college students the data and disparage them, insult them about their poor reading habits. Is that going to convert them into reading? Most probably not. When you disparage them or insult them, they are probably going to be even all the more demotivated. Okay? So that is question number 3 for you. Moving on to the penultimate question. Which of the following can be inferred, limited to Britain, the scope is limited to Britain, from the passage? What can we infer? Definitely can infer B. I have enough evidence for it. I'll tell you what. It says, only in the absence of other means of engaging themselves do many children and young people prefer to read. What evidence do I have to say this? Remember, during the lockdowns, the readership went up. And as soon as the lockdown got over, the readership came down again. That tells me that only in the absence of other means, children are preferring this, not otherwise. Okay? Why not A? Roughly 5% fewer young people read as compared to those who would 17 years ago. Do you have any kind of calculation through which you came at number 5%? Be very careful when you're providing this quantitative data because you have to back it up. I do not have any evidence. A similar thing is about D. Roughly 20% of preteens. I don't have that. All I had was that ratio. Remember? 6:1. But that's all. C. A high schooler is unlikely to have the facility with language as a college graduate. I don't think I compared these two demographics. So, only evidence that I had was for B, and B is the safest option. I hope you are learning with every single question as the agenda is. Let's move on to the last question of the day. Which of the following pieces of information is supplied by the passage? If you are a careful listener, you must be observing what I have been saying so far. If you want to have a quantitative inference, if you want to say something specifically, what proportion of all children read above expected levels? I just know children who read at home are 6 times more likely to read above expected levels as compared to children who do not read at home. That's what I know. But what proportion of all children read above expected levels? What percent of children who read at home? What percent? Not the ratio, okay? What percent who read at home read above expected levels? What percent of children who do not read at home read above expected levels? I do not have specific information to comment about that. That is why the answer is none of the above. So none of the above is a very tempting choice. It seems like the minimal effort to put, and that's why you may feel whenever you are going for this kind of setup, you would always want to choose none of the above. But it is to be chosen when you really can't say anything definitively about the other options. That's when you choose none of the above. Okay, so that's all from my side today. I hope your critical reasoning is definitely getting better and you're finding it more interesting. And this can only improve when you pay attention to the techniques and you solve a lot of questions. Keep coming back to these sessions if you want to solve them with me. I would very much appreciate that. Thank you so much.